Hello, welcome to the 2022 Ingenium Professional Development Seminars. On behalf of Engineers Geoscientists Manitoba, I am Andrew Kalashinsky, a member of the Ingenium Task Group, and I will be the moderator for today's opening session. Before we start today, I would like to acknowledge that the Association office and the majority of its practitioners are located on Treaty 1 territory and the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Inuit, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. Many generations have arrived to our province and contributed to its development, but we must not forget that this land, Indigenous land, has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. Those first people called this area home for generations and thrived, took care of the land, and developed unique ways and methods of design to survive in our province's harshest of conditions. The province's original engineers and geoscientists. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Throughout today's presentations, we encourage you to send in any questions you may have for the presenters via the chat. Please note that this presentation is being recorded and will be available through the Ingenium Hub from tomorrow until January. It is now my great pleasure to welcome our first presenter for this year's conference, Lisa Moretto, who is joining us from RGI Learning. She will be starting today with an interactive session, so I hope you have had your coffee and are ready to engage. Do not worry, you will not be sharing your webcam or microphone in this session, but Lisa will be asking for your thoughts and comments through the chat box. So get ready. Lisa and her team have been working with the association for many years, and we are so pleased to welcome her back to kick off this year's conference. Lisa, you can now share your screen. There we are, we can see you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And thanks to the association for putting on a fabulous conference for you again. I've looked through the sessions and talk about innovation, right? 3 years ago, we were all downtown at the conference center, and look at us now. That's what this whole conference is about. And you heard the premier and also Grant, the president, executive director, talking about innovation. Right? So before we jump into this, I just want to, first of all, congratulate all of you for being here today and for taking this opportunity to expand your horizons. And yeah, I know you're getting PD hours, but what a way to do it, to learn new ideas and to network with fellow professionals. Okay, so Andrew said this is going to be interactive, so please pull up your chats. I love seeing the chats fly by. I can learn a lot from you, and this is the way that we can interact. I also, during my sessions, will ask questions and ask you to raise your electronic hand. All right, your electronic hand. All right, if you're doing this, I can't necessarily see you. All right, so let's try that right now. Why don't you pull up your electronic hand? And if you don't know how to do that in Zoom, ask in the chat. All right, there we go. Oh, hi, Claudia. Nice to know you're out there, Claudia. I know many of you have taken sessions with me in the past. Okay, excellent. All right, so let's jump right in with an interactive question. All right, and this is interacting specifically with yourself right now. All right, what I'd like you to do is ask yourself, when you come into work, do you feel innovative? All right, that's really just a yes or no question right now. So ask yourself that. Do you feel innovative? Does your work environment or your team foster that innovation? And again, that's a yes or no. All right. Now, really important, when you present an issue or a problem, do you also bring with that a solution? Again, and this is just a yes or no. This is how I want to start out our session today by getting you in the mindset of innovation. Okay. So now, in our very, very short session today, I could go on for half a day talking about innovation, but we only have just over an hour for this. So here's what I want to do. I want to start out by defining critical thinking. Right? Some of these words are bounced around in our life, but do we really know what it means and how it applies to us as individuals, to us in the geoscientist and engineering field, and to us living and working in technical organizations? So what is critical thinking? What is innovation? And then I want to introduce you to some real building blocks and foundation components of innovation. And we'll end the session with talking about brainstorming, what it is, how it's best used, and how it relates to innovation. Okay, so critical thinking. Raise your hand electronically if you have heard this term, critical thinking. Okay. Great. So how would you define it to somebody? What does critical thinking mean? And you could put this into the chat for us, please. How would you describe it to somebody? What would the definition be? Absolutely, right? Okay, I like that. Logic, applying logic. All right, I'm a little bit of a word nerd, right? So I often go to dictionary definitions. And very good. And again, I see it's TD. I don't know the full name, but applying logic to solve problems. Basically, the definition is analyzing information and forming a judgment. Right? Effectively analyzing information. Okay, again, think about your daily life, your jobs. Are you critically thinking every day? Are you analyzing information and forming judgments? I don't know about you, but I'm thinking most of you are paid to do this, right? We trust, respect, value, need your analysis of information and, most importantly, your judgment. So absolutely, engineers and geoscientists need to be critical thinkers, right? So what does that look like? Right? Have you ever thought of what it means to be a critical thinker? Okay, absolutely. It's not just finding a solution. Right? We're going to talk more about that with innovation. So a critical thinker, here are some of the characteristics. And, I don't know any of you. I can't even see your faces, but I'm pretty darn sure that there's at least 4 or 5 of these bullets on this screen that you relate to, that you are comfortable in your profession. You could probably raise your hand and say, yeah, that's part of who I am. All right. And that's what makes me comfortable driving over the bridges in Manitoba, as the premier said, right? Because you all are critical thinkers. Right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about critical thinking before we move on? By the way, any of you that are out there as job seekers, maybe these are some of the words that you should have in your CV or resume. Or any of you that are hiring people, look for these qualities, find ways to interview for them. Okay, so critical thinking, the characteristics of a critical thinker. But what's the process that we go through? What's the process? And I'm going to introduce you to 5 basic steps. And notice it's iterative, right? So you may be going through these several times. Firstly, any of you that have taken project management, clearly define the problem, right? Use your language, understand the problem, and then start coming up with those solutions. And that's why I said in that first screen, it's not enough just to raise your hand and say we have an issue, right? You have to be able to suggest solutions and then move through those solutions, right? Figure out how my solution will fix, right? Develop the hypotheses. And here's where that analysis comes, right? Get the ideas, get your information, collect your data, and then analyze the solutions, right? Step 2 is where that brainstorming comes in, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But now we have to narrow it down and take those solutions and test them. This is that whole critical thinking, analyzing, right? Coming up with, I like somebody said, a sustainable solution. Okay, so there's the critical thinking process. But how does that relate to innovation, right? So what is innovation? And again, can put your thoughts into the chat. How would you define innovation? All right, so we've talked about critical thinking. How does that relate to innovation, and what is innovation? Yes, Claudia, thinking outside the box, and that's where the brainstorming, the creative solutions. Christopher, yes. But specifically, what do we do with those solutions? All right. Innovation is when we take a solution, an idea, a method, a product, something that's new, and we introduce it. All right. Novel. I love that way, TD. Novel, that word. Something new, and we introduce it. All right. I want you to keep that in mind. So think about how far we've come in just our 10 minutes together. We've talked about that critical thinking ability and the process we go through to analyze information, to come up with different solutions. And now we're going to introduce it. And that's what the innovation is. So take a look at these. Have you ever heard somebody say this? Maybe a leader or a corporate statement. Maybe your team. Raise your hand again if any of these resonate with you. Yeah, okay, several of you. And see, here's the thing. I hear it. I'm like, okay, I thought I was being innovative. What does that mean? How come we're not doing this? All right, when the negative ones, or somebody says, yeah, that was great, that was innovative. I'm like, okay, I was just doing my job. So what I'd like to do is get you to be able to recognize when you are being innovative and being able to replicate that elsewhere, or when it doesn't feel very innovative, and how can you get out of that rut? So you might want to take this gentleman's name down, Nick Silicorn. He's what we call an innovative coach. Okay. Joy, I see your hands up. Is that a question, comment, or is it just a hangover from the other question? Okay, sorry. A leftover, we'll say. Okay, very good. Okay, so creativity, we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's the whole idea, right? The generating the solutions, the bringing new ideas. That's just a part of it, he says, right? That's thinking something new. Innovation is when we actually implement it, right? That's when we take that idea and make it happen. just having great ideas and being creative, that's nice, but that's only half of the job, right? Innovation is when we take that and we implement it. Now, you can only implement those great ideas, and especially in our profit-oriented organizations, it has to create value, right? And because of that, it's usually through, we want to make sure that it's creating value, but also money with less cost, right? Generate money and reduce the costs. Doesn't that sound like the pressure that all of us are under in our corporate worlds? Come up with a brilliant, great new idea. Make sure it's valuable, but do it with making money and less costs. Okay, so that's our challenge with innovation, right? Come up with a new idea to solve a problem. Make it valuable for both the client and the company. Very cost effective. We need win-win, win-win solutions. Okay? We're in a very dollar-oriented world. As engineers and geoscientists, you know just as well as all other fields, there's a lot of pressure to account for that. With innovation and creativity and your excellent critical thinking skills, you can do this. Right? And that's where the innovation comes in. All right, so let's talk about this a bit. Can anybody think of a very creative idea, but it didn't create money? And think way back or even current times. A very creative idea, process, product, but it didn't make money. Maybe you should go outside your work environments too, just to be safe. Creative idea that didn't make money. Wow, you all are focused on the dollar these days, aren't you? Okay, so if I were to say the name Van Gogh, was he creative? Was he innovative? In his lifetime, was he making money? No, not in his lifetime. Afterwards, his paintings became very valuable. But at the time, he was a very creative person, but he was not implementing to make money. Okay, now think of another product, method, process, something perhaps in our lifetime that was very innovative and creative and made money. Yeah, Michelle, they're coming out with different products in Coke all the time. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Not sure yet. Well, the jury's still out, Michelle. I smell, Adam, I don't even know what that is, but it certainly sounds very innovative. Any other creative ideas? Solved a problem and made money. Absolutely. Look at the smart devices, the smartphones, the iPhones. Absolutely. Perfect example. Thinking outside the box, being very creative, finding a problem, identifying the problem, coming up with a solution. And when we implement it, it makes money. Okay, very good. So that's the part of it, right? Better solutions, right? That meet those requirements. There's a need to it. Yeah, exactly, Scott. All right. So innovation is taking those creative ideas, solving a problem, and doing it in a way that is in a win-win, right? The company has to be happy and the clients have to be happy. All right, any questions about that? Yeah, Joy, in my community, we have a lot of deaf population, right? And they rely on reading lips. Well, imagine what the face masks did to that whole communication process. So the creative, maybe you've seen these, solution was clear just where the mouth is. That's for the deaf community. Okay, so quick exercise. And this is a quick exercise. It's not to see how fast you all are. So take out a piece of paper or somewhere that you can document this for yourself. And I want you to just take a minute. And I want you to identify in your organizations how you would define innovation. What does it look like in your organization? All right. You're welcome to put that in the chat if you're comfortable doing that. All right. What does it mean, innovation? Okay. Now, what's keeping you from doing that? Right? I want you to take another minute and think, what hurdles or barriers or roadblocks, inabilities to being innovative? And this could be at a corporate level. It also could be at a personal level. All right. But what is stopping you from being innovative? And Scott, I read that chat as the first idea, right? Not the second one of being what's inhibiting you. Yes, absolutely, Christopher. And there's that dollar again. Okay. Keep this in mind, right? What does innovation mean to your organization and what's stopping you from doing that? We'll come back to that a little bit later. Okay, so look, already we've progressed through the content. We understand critical thinking, right? We understand some of the qualities that we as individuals and as the field of professionals in engineering and geoscientists, what characteristics we have to be critical thinkers. And then we're going to, we've talked about innovation. Okay, so let's continue by learning some of the components of innovation. This question in there, does innovation need to be ethical? That's a very interesting question. Let me see if, I'm not sure where it's going, but let me see what, give you a comment that I feel. The atomic bombs were very innovative. Right? Was it ethical on how we used that innovation? Not sure. Different people have different thoughts on the need for that tool. Right? Again, there's a lot of debate out there about cloning. Right? Great, innovative use of technology. People will argue whether it's ethical or not. You know, and speaking on that, one of my colleagues, Lori Mara, has done a session for Ingenium this year about clear decision making and ethical decisions. I encourage you to go look at her recorded session about that. Okay, so without creativity, there will be no innovation. right? So I want you to think at the core of innovation is we have to have creativity, right? But if that's the core, right? If that's the heart of innovation, the foundation, the building blocks, the rock we stand on is risk. And that's a very interesting idea, right? We have to have creativity to be able to make up innovative solutions, but we also have to be able to stick our neck out, right? And take a risk. All right. So it is the ability to think outside the box. I heard somebody say that, in those new ways. It can be very scary, right? To risk. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. Okay. So I want you to raise your electronic hand if you would define yourself, one of your personal traits, as being creative. Okay. Not many people, and I see the hands are coming down now. Right? Do your friends and family compliment you on your creativity? All right. Okay. So we've all heard of this, right? The left and the right brain, the different parts of our brain. All right. And we understand that part of the brain is analytical and part of it is creative. Right? What's the stereotype about left and right brained people? Has anybody heard this? What do we hear all the time about left and right brained people and the differences between analytical and creative? Oh, Adele, I like that. Fluffy. Logical versus fluffy. I'm going to go out on a limb there and say that the analytical side is the logical and the creative is the fluffy. Has anybody else heard this? TD, no, it's not necessarily to do with the way that you write. Look what Jeffrey says, that we are born with one or the other, but never both. I think I got both in there, right? But are we not using half of it? Sorry, I don't understand the Sons of Martha. Okay, very good. So what I'm sensing is that we've all done a little bit of research or heard about the differences of our left and right brain. So most people, most technical professionals are relating to what Adele was calling that logical side, right? In fact, many technical professionals either are offended or just can't even comprehend that fluffy or that creative side of their brain, right? I went into engineering because I like the numbers and the analysis and the technical information. So I must be left-brained, right? And using that, right? So yes, that's true, right? That you're more prone to those. But you know what? You do have an other side. You do have two halves of your brain. We all come in with a left and a right side. And when I hear people say, I'm only left-brained, or this is what I'm most attracted to, this is all I can do, or you need to go into this profession because you're artsy-fartsy creative, right? That's not true. That's a horrible stereotype that we have lived with for generations. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to a very short 4-minute video that describes what we call whole brain, right? The whole brain. All right. If you could just give me a thumbs up or raise your electronic hand to make sure that you can hear and see this. Okay. Thanks, Joy. Great.
Behold the human brain, its lumpy landscape visibly split into a left and right side. This structure has inspired one of the most pervasive ideas about the brain, that the left side controls logic and the right creativity. And yet, this is a myth, unsupported by scientific evidence. So how did this misleading idea come about, and what does it get wrong? It's true that the brain has a right and a left side. This is most apparent with the outer layer, or the cortex. Internal regions, like the striatum, hypothalamus, thalamus, and brainstem, appear to be made from continuous tissue, but in fact, they're also organized with left and right sides. The left and the right sides of the brain do control different body functions, such as movement and sight. The brain's right side controls the motion of the left arm and leg, and vice versa. The visual system is even more complex. Each eye has a left and right visual field. Both left visual fields are sent to the right side of the brain, and both right fields are sent to the left side. So the brain uses both sides to make a complete image of the world. Scientists don't know for sure why we have that crossing over. One theory is it began soon after animals developed more complex nervous systems, because it gave the survival advantage of quicker reflexes. If an animal sees a predator coming from its left side, it's best off escaping to the right. So we can say that vision and movement control are two systems that rely on this left-right structure. But problems arise when we overextend that idea to logic and creativity. This misconception began in the mid-1800s when two neurologists, Broca and Wernicke, examined patients who had problems communicating due to injuries. The researchers found damage to the patient's left temporal lobes, so they suggested that language is controlled by the left side of the brain. That captured the popular imagination. Author Robert Louis Stevenson then introduced the idea of a logical left hemisphere competing with an emotional right hemisphere, represented by his characters, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But this idea didn't hold up when doctors and scientists examined patients who were missing a hemisphere or had their two hemispheres separated. These patients showed a complete range of behaviors, both logical and creative. Later research showed that one side of the brain is more active than the other for some functions. Language is more localized to the left and attention to the right. So one side of the brain may do more work, but this varies by system rather than by person. There isn't any evidence to suggest that individuals have dominant sides of the brain, or to support the idea of a left-right split between logic and creativity. Some people may be particularly logical or creative, but that has nothing to do with the sides of their brains. And even the idea of logic and creativity being at odds with each other doesn't hold up well. Solving complex math problems requires inspired creativity, and many vibrant works of art have intricate logical frameworks. Almost every feat of creativity and logic carries the mark of the whole brain functioning as one.
Any comments or aha moments from that video? Yes. Okay. You know what? And Cliff, I just experienced my father having a stroke in his brain, and it's very, very fascinating how the brain works. The takeaway here is we need to exercise and use both sides, and to be innovative and to successfully innovate, bringing these new ideas to solve our problems. You can't just do it analytically. You can't just do it creatively, right? You have to have both sides working. I love the little example there. Solving a complex algebraic formula takes a lot of creativity. And works of art, if you've ever been down to an art museum and really pay attention, don't just look at the colors, but look at the lines and the shading and some of the geometric shapes that are going in there. It's very technical. So it's both sides. All right, both sides. So my lesson here, first of all, if you're a leader and you're managing people, help them recognize the opposite side. As an individual, and I'm going to talk about this in just a moment, seek out ways to use that other side. And please understand, I recognize that the association and most of our participants today are coming from technical organizations where we are so focused on using our analytical brain, right? So that's why I'm saying we need to be more creative. Some of you probably are very comfortable using both sides, but we need to be able to exercise both sides. So think about this for a moment. When do you feel very creative, very innovative? Think about this in your life. And if you're comfortable, put this in the chat. What do you do to really feel creative? That's good. Make sure when you're putting messages in the chat that it's going to everybody, so that all people can see your comments. Yeah, absolutely, Adele. And notice it's the artistic side, right? That's the other part of who you are. Music, art. Okay. Anybody else? Where do you feel you're most creative? Okay. Cooking. That's both sides of the brain too, right? Very analytical. You better get those measurements right. And Jeanette, I'm not sure if I'm saying, we're going to talk about that environment and creating that environment. Okay, excellent. All right, and Jeffrey, what allows you to work outside of the box? All right, what gets you in that zone? All right, so here's what I want you to, another takeaway, and what I want you to really focus on in your life. All right, some people said music, sports. Sports can be a very relaxed environment, or that high pressured stress, which kicks us to the next level of performance. But you also have to be very creative. All right, and there's the art. Even reading. Reading can start to get you into another space, another way of thinking. All right, so how do we do this in our jobs, right? We have to take that relaxed mind, that energetic outside the box, that sense of joy in doing cooking or singing or music, and bring that chemical aspect in our brain into our daily solutions. Yeah, Lisa, absolutely. Certain lectures or speakers can create that spark. Okay, so again, whole brain thinking. So it's great to talk about it. Yeah, but you can't come into Manitoba Hydro or KGS and start cooking. Some of your colleagues might appreciate that. But how do you become more creative as a person so that it flows over into your natural characteristics as an engineer or geoscientist? Well, the first thing I want you to do is get out of your conscious mind. Yeah, the unconscious mind is that part of your body and your brain that just is automatic. It's a ritual. You do this all the time. It just automatically comes into your unconscious and you are. We got to unlock that. We got to be able to get out of that mindset. All right. The reason being is we have to get you thinking with both sides so that you don't get stuck into what's called that analysis paralysis, right? Staying in that analytical mind and over again analyzing it and never thinking of anything new. One way of simply doing this is change your environment, right? Get yourself out of your normal work setting. Go for a walk. Go to that museum and admire the art. Take a break and go make your lunch, right? Or while you're cooking, start thinking about other solutions to work problems while you're in that environment. That's why, I'm not sure if we have any architects with us today. I know some engineering firms have architects also. Architects today are creating workspaces that are very different. Lots of plants, lots of windows, or they even have areas inside buildings where we can go to think and create. Now, the real key here is it takes time, right? You can't be in a rush and say, okay, time to be creative, let's go, right? It's not going to work that way. It's like a muscle. You have to practice this. You have to start using that other side of your brain. Do it in non-vulnerable situations so that when you get into your high-pressure work environment, coming up with a solution for your client, you can start to think differently. Does anybody else have any other ideas? Yeah, Lisa, you're like me. I need to see the sky, right? Or I can't think. I feel very, very claustrophobic and oppressed. All right, that's great that you know that about yourself. Some people may not be able to leave a job, but I like how you said the workplace. We can find other places to do things. Anybody else have any other ideas on how to be more creative? Some people say exercise, right? They want to exercise in the morning so that they can get everything firing, strong and be very focused when they get to work, right? And that's part of opening up the creative mind also. For me, exercise just puts me right to sleep, so I can't do anything afterwards. Okay, so brainstorming with other people, Christopher. Yeah, I like that, Mackenzie. Just talking to other people, going for a walk, changing your environment. Meditation. Again, I could do a whole session on meditation and how quieting the mind, right, helps us focus and bring out new ideas. Yep, and we're going to talk about that, Lisa, too. Different experiences, different backgrounds. That's where brainstorming comes in. Wouldn't it be horrible if all we did was have people that thought and acted the same way we do in our life? Yeah. And Claudia, there's a lot that you can do right in your work environment with some of the apps and tools that we have just to take a quick break for painting and coloring. Yeah, that's a very creative way is sharing your knowledge, right? And if you're in the audience and somebody is teaching you something, that can start sending you off on different tangents. Okay. Oh, nice plug for Ingenium, Lisa. Very well done. Okay. So I remember I told you that creativity is just the heart of it. We also have to risk. We also have to risk. And this is very risky for technical people. But I want you to think about this for a moment. Those who have had extreme success have also had extreme failure. All right? Look at some of these people. Think about the iterative design and the tests and the different products that he must have gone through before he came up with the telephone. Right? He didn't hit it at number one, right? Same thing with the automobile. Right? And this is very innovative, right? Addressing a problem, coming up with a solution that makes money. Anybody know who Marie Curie is? Yeah, Christopher, we'll talk about our bosses in a moment. Yes. Anybody know who Marie Curie was? Okay. Here's your little tidbit of knowledge for the day. All right. First woman to win Nobel. First person twice. And only person in 2 different sciences. Yeah. So Marie Curie, again, think of the technology and the science and the trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And she had to have that ability inside her to risk, or she would have never succeeded. All right. So how do we learn to take risks? All right. How do we learn to take risks? Remember that risk is really your response to an uncertainty, right? And that's what we're going to call your risk attitude. What is your attitude to taking a risk? Right? Is it positive or is it negative? And whatever that is, however you answer that is what's going to drive you forward. And it varies, not only for people, but in different situation, my attitude toward risk will change. Right? So your response is going to be whether, it's positive or negative experience. All right. So let's take a look at some typical examples, right? Or types of risks. So in the financial world, there's risk, right? What are some of the risks that we see or experience in the financial world? Yeah, investing, right? Could be positive, could be negative, right? And they even use that word. What's your risk attitude towards this? Are you going to be aggressive or are you going to be more conservative? It all depends on your perception and it's very individual. What about in the medical world? What are some of the risks that we take or that we have to consider? Yeah, do I wear a mask or not wear a mask? Right? The clinical trials, let's get our data, right? Should I have the surgery or not? Right? I'm going to weigh the pros and cons. And some people say, oh yeah, right away. Other people are, well, I'm not so sure. All right. What about in the engineering world? What are some of the risks? that you have to analyze. All right. Okay, public safety, right? Is this safety, environment, people? Absolutely. Here we go again, cost versus quality. All right. There's some of the risks that we have to take, or how is it going to affect the climate or the environment? Okay, so PMI is the Project Management Institute, right? And they talk quite a bit about risk attitude. All right, I'm just taking a small component of this. So your attitude toward a risk, it's based on two factors: your appetite and your tolerance. All right, your appetite and your tolerance. So what do these mean? Your appetite is how much am I willing to take on, right? How much can I, like appetite, how much can I eat of that risk? Whereas the tolerance is that threshold, right? How much can I tolerate, right? So how much can I take on and how much can I tolerate? You got to have a nice balance between that, right? How much do I desire, right? But am I going to be vulnerable, right? I got high cholesterol, but boy, can I put away, seafood, right? I got a big appetite for my seafood, but I got to be careful because there's consequences with that, right? So I want you to think of appetite and tolerance. All right. So personally, in your personal lives, think of some of these things. And we're all going to have different answers here. Some are going to say, oh yeah, love it. Can't wait to do it. That's really thrilling. And others are going to say, never, no way, not in my lifetime. For all of these, actually. So what's your appetite for this? And what's your tolerance? All right. So that's in our personal life. What about in our professional life? All right. And this last one kind of crosses over. What's your appetite? And what's your tolerance? So are you getting an idea now about the importance of taking risk and how we all vary? So the important thing here is know your levels, but also be aware of other people's, right? So when we start talking about innovation in a corporate environment, and we've got that, that boss over our shoulder, that boss's risk attitude may not be as risk seeking as ours for whatever reason. All right, risk and reward. Yeah, that's another good way of putting it. All right. So different people will have risk adverse, no way. Or you know what, I can handle it because there's a reward at the end, Tim. Or there's those others that are like, yeah, let's do it. All right. In your teams, in your companies, you're going to have all different levels of this. All right. Some people will say, and maybe it's even your clients, have you done this before? Can you prove it to me that it works? I don't want it to have a lot of risk. Other people are, well, you know what? We've never done this before, so it may be better than what we've done. Let's try it. So again, I may be very risk adverse in my personal life, but have a bigger appetite at work, or vice versa. You know, as an engineer or geoscientist, I can't be risky at all, but at home, yeah. It's so different areas will have different levels. Right. And a lot of this is based on who we are and what we've experienced. But here's the thing. We can overcome some of this. Right? We being ourselves, or we being colleagues or leaders. Right? Perfect example of this. You know, maybe you have a colleague or an employee, or maybe it's yourself that has a fear of flying. Right? And you have just been told, or you have to send somebody, you know, to Vancouver, right, to see a client. Well, maybe that person needs extra time to get to that client. So you suggest innovatively, let's build in more travel time and you take the train. Right? So we can compensate for some of those internal thoughts or fears and help that person. All right. The idea is that sometimes those traditional approaches don't work. Right? Sometimes just because we've done it this way in the past, so that's how we're going to do it now, doesn't work. So how do we help in our companies? How do we help others on our teams, or managers or supervisors or those bosses? How do we let them understand that you have a very low tolerance and we need to raise it up so that we can be innovative? Because that's what our customers and clients are asking us to be. All right. So understand that risk attitude. Know what's happening on the outside and what you can and cannot influence. Right. And again, think of my airplane versus train. Right. And this is where that risk and reward that Tim brought up. What is the true risk? What is going to happen? And what is that true reward? And if they don't calculate correctly, maybe it's not worth it. Right? If the risk is losing a customer and it's a very, very important customer, then that risk is not worth it because the reward is negative. And this is where your analytical mind is going to help balance. Oftentimes, what we do is we keep this in our head or in our hearts, and we never communicate it. If there's something that is risky, or if your tolerance is low, you need to communicate that. Just as much as if your tolerance is high, communicate that. That's going to help the people around you understand where you're at. One of the hardest challenges for you as an individual and as a team is to believe that we can do differently. Okay. Again, if you've got a boss that is breathing down your neck and saying, no, 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 there's something in there that they don't, and this is where you need to research more on change management. There's something in there that is stopping this person from wanting to change. Okay, so how can you as an individual help yourself become more tolerant to risk? Maybe if you're a leader and you have a team, how can you do that? All right. So it goes back to that risk attitude. Make sure you understand it. Sometimes people don't even recognize this. It's just they can feel it, but they never put words to how risky things feel towards them. So put words to it. Encourage yourself. Calculate risk versus reward. And make sure that the environment is such that you're not going to lose your job if you fail, right? And believe me, I appreciate that some, especially out there in the safety, you don't have room for this. So you have to apply this elsewhere in your life. Okay. But look for opportunities, non-vulnerable ones, to practice this. I think you'd be surprised at how many more there are than we realize. Yeah. Pros and cons, risk and reward. Okay. So let's go back and do another exercise here. Think about yourself. What do you believe is your risk tolerance? All right. And again, it could be in different situations. We've already discussed that. All right. But is it stopping you from being innovative and bringing forth different solutions? What is your risk tolerance? How much can you take? And how can you adjust that to become more creative and innovative and accept learning by failing? And if you're comfortable sharing in the chat, I welcome that. But again, this is more of an individual exercise for you to recognize who you are. You know, that to hire or not to hire, it's very risky. It's very risky. You're bringing somebody on, especially in this environment when we're so urgent to find people. It's a huge risk. Are they going to fit in? Are they going to perform? How are they going to stay with us? The investment. Yeah. You know, that's a great point there. Truly innovative. You don't know all the risks. And that's why, if you remember my slides, the heart of it is the creativity. You have to be creative to be innovative. But that foundation is the risk. There's going to be risk. And somebody that tells you that there is no risk has not done their homework. All right. Yeah, again, I do a whole session on team building and about understanding people's risk tolerance, who they are, not pushing them too far. Yeah. So along with the team building, that's a nice segue into my last topic, which is the brainstorming. All right. And brainstorming is a very common technique that helps us become more creative and come up with different ideas. Just raise your hand. Raise your hand if you don't like brainstorming sessions, right? Oh, I hate these. Is there anybody out there? Yeah. Jeffrey was quick to respond. I don't think he's alone. Yeah, here they come, Jeffrey. Yeah. Tell me why. Why don't you like brainstorming? Okay. For the rest of you that do enjoy brainstorming, why? Why do you enjoy brainstorming? Christopher, I like them when I feel like I'm contributing. Sometimes you don't feel like you're contributing. Yeah. Okay. So again, I've seen Christopher says sometimes they're sorry, that was Jeffrey, that they're not focused, they're useless, they're sometimes it's hard, Adele, to get the juices flowing. So what I want to talk about next is why it's a very, very important part of the innovation, right? But there are definite ways to improve brainstorming sessions. And I love this quote here. Okay? If all we have is one way of doing it, and we've done that before and before and before, that's dangerous. Right? A lot of the our consulting engineering companies, you're being hired for your creative, innovative ideas. I don't want you to do something for me that you just did for somebody else. I want you to understand my problem and make it special and unique. Right? So they are hiring you for your innovation, but it's often not said that way. So brainstorming, this is a way of breaking through some ideas, right? And looking at a different way of doing it. That's the definition of innovation, right? We talked about that, doing something in a new way. So brainstorming, we have to be able to do this, right? I want you to think of the brainstorming as, and I love this word, the ideation, right? This is where we come up with the ideas. Remember we talked about critical thinking in our first set of slides? Critical thinking is being able to analyze information and come up with a solution. You need to have the opportunity to come up with ideas. All right. Now, here's some guidelines. Right? This is fantastic if you are a leader. And again, raise your hand if you are a leader, a supervisor, somebody that can facilitate and coordinate brainstorming sessions. All right. So here's some key things that you need to pay attention to so that it is productive, so that people are having the creative juices, right? That they feel comfortable and not going to be made fun of, right? For those of you that aren't, you still can influence a brainstorming session by, again, before the session, asking some questions, right? To make sure that it is going to be productive. All right. A lot of times that analytical people, and I've already told you that many technical professionals are stuck or are living or are more comfortable in that right brain side. They feel very awkward, coming up with crazy ideas, right? So successful facilitators help them. Right? Give some guidelines in advance. Give them time to prepare. Throw out some pre-brainstorming questions or scenario so that they can come to the session with already having some ideas, right? And this is what's going to help you, Adele, right? To start getting your ideas before you even get put on the spot in the meeting. And that, of course, requires that clear communication of the problem. Right? The Project Management Institute talks about defining the issue, defining the problem. Right? Now, very important, the facilitator is not the one that's recording the ideas. You need to have somebody else doing it because you cannot do both at the same time. One will fail, right? And usually it's the facilitating and generating the environment. You're so focused on getting the ideas down. So now nobody's going to get you ideas because you're not facilitating it well. All right. So get somebody else to do it. Not too big, not too small. All right. And rough guideline, maybe 5 to 10 people. Okay? Anything smaller than that, and you're going to get the same old ideas. Right? Or you're going to be saying, yeah, what he said or what she said. Any larger than 10 people, and people aren't going to be able to express their ideas. So watch the size. Make it very clear that this is not the point to debate or analyze or tear apart. Nothing is going to be discussed or rejected. It's just an unconscious flow of ideas. Random connections, right? I love this. You might be talking about a traffic issue, right? And the next thing you know is you come up to a junction we need to incorporate. And hey, how about a roundabout, right? How about 2 roundabouts, right? And you're just kind of jumping off on different tangents. Okay. Any other experiences or ideas about brainstorming that you'd like to share? Positive or negative experiences that you may have had? Yeah, and that's lack of focus. Is that from the session itself? So the facilitator was not focused, or is that you as an individual is not focused? Okay. Yeah. So again, figure out ways that you can be focused. Maybe you have to ask the facilitator in advance. Can you give me a problem statement? Right, so that I can prepare. Yeah, good point too. We're trying to accomplish too much here. Maybe we need multiple brainstorming sessions and to break the tasks or the scope up. Okay, so let me leave you with this. If there is a brainstorming session, immerse yourself fully. Get yourself in that whole brain mindset. Right? Ask the facilitator in advance for the scope and some situations so that you can come prepared. All right. Help create an environment that is non-confrontational, and encourage others. Okay, so you know what? Food is important. I love that. Yes, I think I've got that on a future slide. Food is important for many reasons, right? It makes it fun. It fills your belly so that you're not hungry. And depending on the types of food, it can create very different ideas. You know, multicolored jelly beans. Excellent. Okay, so how do we do this in our environments now? Right. I know I saw several comments earlier. Well, you know, my organization, they don't encourage innovation. We have to stick to the dollar. I appreciate that. That's very understandable. It's a very, very slow process and you have to be part of it. Don't just say, oh yeah, well, that's the way it is. Right. Start small. Right. Stay positive about it. I like how somebody said, break it up, right? Start in smaller tasks and recognize it, that what you've done or what somebody else has done. If you're in a situation where you're the lead, right? Talk about innovation early in a client relationship or a new project, right? At the kickoff meeting, tell people we're going to have successes and failures. Here in our group, we're going to accept that, right? I've built in some time for this. Right? Make sure that the hierarchy, right? The moment a leader relinquishes control and allows somebody else to come up with an idea, the creativity starts to flow. Right? Removing obstacles. It could be technology, it could be time, it could be money. Right? Maybe you've set aside a budget so that we could do this. Right? Maybe it's getting them out of their normal work environment and go down to a park somewhere in May or June. In Winnipeg, nobody wants to be out in the park in January. Right? There is going to be the naysayers, right? The negativity. You need to stop that down early. Right? Talk to that person privately. Don't embarrass them in front of other people. Right? So create a creative environment. Maybe at the meeting, you've got those jelly beans, you've got the food, maybe you've got some of those little toys that people can do. Maybe you have a little icebreaker in advance to get the juices flowing. Right? And talk about the work-life balance. right? Encourage people to find what makes them creative, that music, that art, that sport, and allow them to participate in that. Creating the environment, whether you are in a position as a leader or you are a colleague, create that environment and you're going to see more innovation happening, right? You're going to see more innovation happening. It's a slow process, but it can happen and it's fun, right? Don't be stuck in a rut, right? Find ways to be creative and encourage those around you. All right, let's go back to the beginning, right? Look at those barriers that you listed. What can you do? Think about 3 ideas that you can implement or change or do to help remove those hurdles, roadblocks for the creativity and the innovation. And again, if you're comfortable sharing in the chat, that might help others also. Which, by the way, is a great way to get other people to start being creative, is offer an idea first. Who's got an idea here? How we can break down, overcome those barriers to innovation and creativity. Okay, thank you. Right? Respectfully, yes. Listening. I do a whole session on listening skills too, by the way. Right? Create that environment. State it out loud. Yeah, safe and fun. Right? Fun is not a 4-letter word. One of my other managers, the motto was, we're going to make fun where there is none. Okay, excellent. So now, what are you going to do for yourself? So we talked about the environment. What are you going to do for yourself to create those habits? Colorful jelly beans on your desk are always a good start. Sitting by a window. I don't remember who's mentioned that. Yeah, you know, Lisa, thank you for saying this. And we're in, and I'm using the word transition, but we are evolving as a society to understand, and allowing diverse people to feel comfortable is going to help all of us, right? Absolutely, but it's a slow process. Okay, let me wrap up. Andrew, I'll toss it back to you. We have some time here for some questions.
All right. That was good stuff. Thank you, Lisa, for that presentation. And thank you to all of you viewers for participating in the chat so actively. That was more entertaining to me than perhaps you intended, Lisa, as the list of qualities of being a critical thinker immediately made me think of Dilbert's The Knack, if anyone's familiar with it. And it might be different, so don't quote me on it anyway. So yes, everyone, if you have questions, we have approximately 5 minutes for questions. Put them into the chat, and I'll read them out to you, Lisa. so that they can get onto the audio recording. I also noticed that I'm drinking from my corporate coffee cup. That's a portmanteau of innovation. So it's put into our marketing quite deliberately right there. And as for creative ideas that didn't make money, I'm sure I have a few. And I think it's actually pretty common in design offices. The engineers, give them enough time, they will come up with loads of ideas. Unfortunately, they don't get greenlit because of cost or market dynamics. But yeah, the creativity is always there. Just monitoring it here. You mentioned the brainstorming, and you sort of answered this question anyway, to define the scope of the brainstorming session early on. Yeah, if you're not even the leader of the group, it's good to get that scope defined so that other people can define it in their heads. Could you clarify that one bullet point of the random connections? I didn't quite catch all of that there.
The random connections. Okay, so we're talking about building a mode of transportation, and somebody comes up with the idea of a bicycle, an electric bicycle. Well, why do we need why not unicycle? All right, so we just go off onto this tangent. Well, why do we even need a wheel? Why don't we have a hovercraft? All right, so we're still talking about mode of transportation, but we've gone off tangent, and we still come to a new idea. Does that help you, Andrew?
I think on the times that happens, I'm perhaps sadly the one who's like, okay, bring it back.
Yeah, you can't at that point in the brainstorming session, because when you say bring it back, you have just lost all those creative juices. The bring it back is later when we start to analyze. All right, let's take a look at that hovercraft. That's never gonna work. All right, that's when we do it later.
Mm-hmm. Do you think personality type has anything to do with one's ability to be creative or innovative?
Yes and no. Okay, so if any of you have been through the personality assessment tool, the Myers-Briggs personality type, first of all, if you haven't, I encourage you to do that. I've presented that several times at Ingenium in the past. There are certain personality types that we are born with, which are more creative than others. But the thing is we have both sides. We have that whole brain. And what we find is that certain personalities will take an existing idea or concept and improve it. I can make this better. Other personalities will throw that all out and start from scratch. They're both being very creative and innovative, but different ways. So again, understanding a little bit about personalities, who you are and who others, can help you invigorate brainstorming and creativity.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here from Chuck. How has the work from home situation challenged innovation in the workplace?
Excellent question, Chuck. And you know what? The jury is still out, because we're just starting to do a lot of studies on this now. Some people, and again, this comes back to personalities too. Some people need that group think to get the energy going, and other personality types need the quiet, introverted type thinking ability alone. But then they do have to come back. Zoom, somebody put this into the chat, is an excellent use of technology to help break down the awkward environment of being segregated.
All right. Well, sadly, we are down to our last 60 seconds. That may be all the questions we have for you, Lisa.
And Andrew, if I can just end on one note.
Sure.
I was based in Rochester, New York, world headquarters of Kodak.
Okay.
An electrical engineer had a brilliant idea of a digital camera at Kodak. He was down in the basement bowels of the corporation, and one day he got to go to the 27th floor to all the executives to show him this brilliant idea of a digital camera. And he says, "Look, no film." and they sent him back down 27 floors and squashed his brilliant idea. Guess what year that was?
1974.
Very close, 1972. Imagine where Kodak would be today if they had embraced innovation and figured out how to make money with that new idea. Don't be that company, don't be that person. Keep pursuing, keep being innovative, and enjoy Ingenium. And thank you to Gemma and her team for this opportunity.
Thank you for watching. Visit the Ingenium On Demand library for more exclusive content.